Hello and welcome to Vemotion's partner technical webinar. It's great for you to join us. I'm joined by Dan Sharp. I'm sure you all know is our, I'll get this right this time, you're our technical service king of the hill. Is that right, Dan?
That's something like that.
So thanks for joining us. So we're going to run you through a few things, which we can keep it brief. Everyone's time is obviously very, very important. So what we've got running for you today, very quick thing of who we are, what we do. I know a lot of you know that. And then we're going to have a look at our current product range and where they fit and what they can do. That's the V boxes, the poll cam, and of course our mobile app as well. We're going to give you a little sneak peek into our new products, and then you're going to be lucky enough to get a few demos of the software. And stick around, because at the end there will be a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat section, which is no, it's there. It's there on that side. So put the chat section and you'll be able to ask us questions. We're happy to answer. Myself and Dan will be here for the whole of the presentation. So Vemotion today, well, you know, Vemotion as ever, we're constantly moving forward, and you'll see some of our new products. Really, we're still about now what we were about 20 years ago. It's about providing the best quality picture for the lowest amount of bandwidth. And often, you know, people say, well, hang on, there's loads of bandwidth now, Nick. We've got it coming out of our ears, unlimited SIM cards. But as you all know, in the real world, there's internet weather, there's edge connections, there's cell towers go down, and this fully resilient, reliable pictures we serve, you know, really does go down well. And all our customers know, and your customers know that that's the great strength of Vemotion. We can provide you with a picture, and of course, if for some reason there's a total outage of a network, you've still got it being recorded on the unit. The other thing, of course, we're constantly moving on is our integration with various VMS platforms. We get asked all the time, can you work with this VMS, can you work with that VMS? And on the whole, and Dan's going to wince now, the answer is yes. And we've actually added 2 or 3 VMS integrations in the last year. And sometimes it's just, we've actually been asked to do back iteration. We have to do some legacy VMS, and we've done them as well. So just, you know, if it's not on the list, ask us, and you probably will. And of course, you know, our products are completely open source, so you can work with any kind of camera, you can put any recorder, and we will work with all of them. Then of course, what we're going to talk about next is our combined units. But if you have any questions, it's a Q&A session coming up at the end. So just ask us what we're doing and where we're going from there. So that's it. I said it before, Vemotion delivers high quality live video, even with low bandwidth and unreliable networks, which effectively, as you know, is just unreliable networks is basically every network. What we'd like to do now is take you through the hardware, because obviously, you know, you phone us up and you say, oh, can we have this, can we have that? It's kind of like, you know, what do our various units do? What do they look like? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? So we'll go through the V boxes, which is of course the VB 200, 300 and 400. And first, the 200, which is our small unit. And I'll just show it to you a little bit close up now. So here it is. This is the 200. As you can see, it's very small format. Here's a credit card size. It's my Costa card, but here's a credit card size unit. You can see it's just over the size of a credit card. Its width is about 1.5 centimeters. Front and back have inputs and outputs, so you can screw it down using the 2 points there. So you've got USB 3, USB 2, HDMI out, and obviously local area network in. So obviously you can daisy chain off those. So it's a very powerful unit, and we'll tell you a bit more about it right now. So Dan, someone phones up and talks to us or comes onto our stands. Where would you recommend the VB200?
So the VB200 is mainly aimed at people where space is an issue, where they need a small unit to fit in a tight space, whether that be because they're integrating it into an existing product they might have, or it might be for covert reasons, or you know, anywhere where they need something that is small. Or it's also used for people that actually, I've only got one camera. I only wanted to stream out one camera. So there's no need for a big box. There's no need for a super powerful box because it's one camera going into the unit. The other option as well is, with it being 5 volt, is you can plug in the modem, you can plug in a USB camera, and you can plug in a power bank, and you can power this thing now on your person. So that gives you a lot of options for some of our customers. Or you might want to put it in a bike, a motorbike or a scooter or something like that, and that gives you the options there with it being such a small and low powered unit. As it says there, it comes with storage is on a micro SD card, and it's 512 as standard, but obviously, you know, that can be upgraded to a terabyte if needs be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple of points. The 5 volt power is actually very, very useful, you say, because it becomes a fully portable unit there, because obviously powering is an issue. But also, what we found with a couple of customers, actually the external modem has proved very useful as well, because the box can live in a covertly hidden place, or perhaps even an open place, but then you can run a wire to the aerial, and therefore, despite the box being perhaps in a place which is not ideal for reception, by the time you run one small wire up to the aerial, that external modem can get a really good signal. So that's been done a lot of times. And as you mentioned, a lot of this is for cars and vans and that sort of thing. The thing to remember is, despite the fact it is incredibly small and incredibly powerful, it's not incredibly expensive. So it's, it is still cost effective. As Dan says, you've got a one camera in, one camera out. Thing to remember, I think, really, and I think it's quite important, is that this unit is IP USB. It's designed to be small. It's not. There isn't an analog option. There isn't an HDMI in option. It is. Is that right, Dan?
That's correct. Yeah.
So just that's a key point, really, because I think people normally, when they're using these small units, yes, it's all IP or it's USB, but sometimes people get a little bit confused, because if you can see there is an HDMI port on there, that's HDMI out. So it's just to avoid a bit of confusion we've had in the past with people who've used it. So it comes as an all-in unit, and the flexibility is absolutely key for this thing. It's size, its location. You can go anywhere, and it's also incredibly powerful. You've got a 2 in 1 out full HD, 2 in 2 out 720p. So there's very few, I would say, covert operations that would need more than this. So it's certainly gone down well with several people we can't mention. So next in the list is the 300. Now the 300 unit is really a family of units, much like the VB30s were, a selection of them. So I've got one of you've got one of the 300s in the picture there. I've got one of the other 300 versions, which I can just show you now. This is the 300 and in all its glory, and there's my Costa card again. A lot more ins and outs, obviously, which the form factor allows it. COM port. You come around here, you've got the really useful 2 Ethernets. A brace of USB 3s and USB 2s, but also in a very reasonably compact unit. I think to remember is, if you do have the analog or HDMI in, it kind of doubles the depth, but it still has that same footprint, and that's a 300. Let's hear a bit more about it now. So Dan, this is quite a different beast than the 200, isn't it? Whilst it's sort of an overlap in their capabilities, it's a different. This is the workhorse unit, isn't it?
Most definitely, yeah. This is for customers that have been with us for a while. This is the 30 replacement. That's why it's a 300, and it is it's aimed at the same job that the 30 did. So you've got your standard 4 in and your 2 outs or your 3 outs if you're doing 720, and it's aimed more around vehicles. As you can see there, it's got the mounting brackets on there as standard. Of course, it's again fanless design, as they all are. All our units are, and it really is just there to do all the jobs that you need it to do. So you purchase this and you can use it in any different jobs that your customer needs, really. So it's aimed at more cameras, and obviously it's got more storage as standard, but again, that can be upgraded. You can go up to 2 or even 4 terabytes if that's what you wanted. You'll see there that the unit's got 2 Ethernet rather than 1. So again, we can have 2 cameras in there without the need for a switch straight away, which obviously makes life a lot easier. You're back to 12 volt because, again, like we say, aiming it at vehicles and things like that, converting it to 12, having it as 12 volts, you're not having to do as much conversion there. All you need to do is have a voltage regulator in between and you're good to go. And it's the standard power on and boot and things like that.
Yeah, and of course the slightly slightly taller version that adds a analog or HDMI in. The or
HDSDI if you want.
Or HDSDI, which is also very important. Yeah, it is an or, so it's one of those, not all of those. But obviously that kind of covers you for obviously both legacy equipment and some more specialized equipment. So yeah, so it's absolutely the workhorse. There is of course a version of this which is available on a board, but that's obviously for people who are completely bespoke in their units. Obviously, a lot of you guys will take one of these 300s and then repackage it into your own particular device, be it internal or external, because that's really where the power of the unit comes. Hundreds of these, and hundreds of their predecessors, the 30 out in the field, and many of these going out, with total reliability and flexibility. That's the real idea: is you can plug most stuff into it, and this does have an internal modem. Am I right, Dan?
You are, yeah. So that differs from the 30 and the 30 mu previously. They both had external modems. It was the mu IP that had an internal, but both the new 300 and the 300U both have an internal modem. So obviously you can now, you can put on any aerial extension and of course then any antenna at the end of that on there. So if this is as as similar to the 200. If it's in somewhere at bottom of a column or somewhere like that, somewhere that doesn't have great signal, you can just run an antenna up somewhere high and connect it and get a great signal out of it.
Moving on now, and I haven't actually got one of these, so I can't physically show it to you, but if you imagine something the size, a big brick basically, a very big powerful brick. This is the 400, and the 400 is an interesting unit because effectively we say, what do you want? And then it does it. It is effectively a chassis machine which we will then work with you to produce what you need. So it can go from 12 in and 8 out, full HD, but it could be you want something a bit smaller, 2.1, 3.1, 4.2, and we'll spec them to that requirement, and that gives you the flexibility, doesn't it, Dan?
It does, yeah. These things can be ridiculously powerful for the size of the unit, which means that you can put an enormous amount of cameras in. And my thought process on that and sort of the area that you'd look to do that is sort of ships, trains, big yards that need multiple cameras going in and multiple cameras going out. The joy of these as well is we can even do one that's a taller unit, because underneath that we can put a bank of storage. So even though you put in lots of cameras in, we can still make sure that we're recording all those locally with a decent time frame of storage on there. We can put PoE Ethernet ports in there, so you don't even have to worry about powering your cameras. For instance, if you want to put 4 PoE cameras in there, you can put those in, and then you're only powering one box rather than a large thing, a large amount of power having to come out for that. They can do ignition control on those units as well, so that again gives you more features and options for when you're supplying these to your customers with their requirements. We can marry them up quite nicely with this box to whatever the specification might be.
The number of encoders you have and how much is coming back is up to you, and you can but it's just a very flexible box, really. It's nice because you say, can you do that, and we can say yep with a 400. Next up is probably the one which just everyone knows, which is our old faithful, the pole cam. Hundreds of these out in the field with many councils, police and others. It's a 30 unit, or was a 30 unit with built-in 20-ton optical zoom. It's only 3.5 kilos, which is the key point. Keep below 5 kilograms to be able to put onto street furniture. Flexible storage, and of course, one of the engineers is 12 volt or 240 volt. Dan, obviously, we shipped hundreds of these, haven't we?
Oh yeah, there's many of these out in the field, replacing the previous iteration, which was an old analog beast, which weighed 7.5 kilograms. So that this one came in to replace that, and then obviously we're moving on from there as well.
Shh, you're giving away the next part of the presentation. No. But this unit is still very much a current piece of kit, and we're rolling many out every single month. Very briefly, the final thing we talk about is the smartphone app, the VBX smartphone app. Now, the app's been around for a while, and it got significantly updated about 12 or 13 months ago. It has 2 iterations: an Android iteration which does everything, and so it streams and it records and everything. And we also now have reinstituted the iOS viewer for people, because we dropped that for a while. It does a huge amount of things. Effectively, it becomes the viewer in your pocket. Anything you can do with the view, you can do with the app. If you're particularly interested in this, because it is slightly separate, what I'd say is drop us a line, and we'll send you some outline information on it. It's effectively, it gives you the viewer in your hand, and if you have the streamer and the encoder in the viewer, you have a full unit which you can use. Lots of power there, but probably as we're trying to keep this brief and pithy, we won't go too far. Apart from to say, well, you've got an encoder in your hand, and you can just point it at anything. Next up is probably the bit that everyone's most excited about: what the new products are that are coming soon. Are you excited, Dan?
Oh, I'm giddy with anticipation.
And it's all been. We have a new pole cam. The pole cam is being updated, upgraded in every way. Dan, take it away with all our new pole cam facts and figures.
So the new pole cam, as you can see there, I would like to iterate that it is not as long as the existing one, because it's got that rectangle box on the side. It makes it look like it's the same, and we've just made a much bigger pole cam, but we haven't. It will be shorter. And another key thing is they actually designed it on purpose to sit further away from the pole, so you actually get a better view without the pole obscuring quite as much as it does by default when it's much closer to the pole. Yep, the new pole cam, that's going to have a 25 times optical zoom, and what's great about that is, with it being a 4 megapixel camera, which is UHD, not quite 4K, but double the size of full HD, is with our new software, we have fantastic digital zoom on top of that. So if you are wanting to zoom in from something really far away, you will be able to do that with good clarity. As I said, it's a bump up in the size. The camera is now a 4 megapixel camera. So that will give you a lot greater detail in your recordings. It will also give you, if you are zooming in, if you are using the ability of this camera, which will have the ability to show you the wide area of the street, and then you can focus in on something, for example, fly tipping, antisocial behavior, you'll be able to digitally zoom in. But with it being such a high resolution, you'll get a very clear digitally zoomed image. It'll come with 2 terabytes of storage as standard. Because we're putting in a high resolution camera head, we felt that we needed to bump the storage up there, so you can still get that 30 days, because for a lot of councils, that is their GDPR for video, being the 30 days recording, so they will still get that. Of course, if you wanted to increase that storage, that's still there as well. The camera head has some good analytics on it, so such as movement, tamper alarms and things like that, which can be fed straight into our viewer. So you can get those along with, as it says there, motion detection, and you'll still be able to set up your privacy masks, presets and TORs as always. And we're looking at around about 4 kilograms, so slightly more than the old one, but still within the needed weight category to be able to be put on light columns.
And this should be available when, Dan? January, February?
Talking January, February now. We're at the point now where we are just waiting to receive our first physical prototype, working prototype, I should say. So of course, once we've got that, there'll probably be 1 or 2 little bits we'd like to change or neaten up, and then it'll go into production. So yeah, I think January, February is probably about right.
So get your orders in now. Though I don't know how much it's going to cost yet. So I don't think there'll be any significant uplift on the existing unit. Probably they'll be about the same. But yeah, so that's effectively we're providing you with a much better camera for the same cost. We're so lovely here at Vemotion. We do have a little bit of software as well that's been developed. We have a new downloader and a new local interface. Just to give us a bit of a highlights of the downloader, Dan.
So the downloader has been designed really for, it was the councils within mind, but obviously works for everybody. Is they might have a lot of footage or some footage that they wish to download, but they might not want to download it straight away, and they might want to have a certain time, be that 3 a.m, for example, that they want to download. You don't want somebody there at 3 a.m. to have to click download. So what the downloader does is you pre-select a time, date, and amount of footage that you wish to download from a particular camera, and you set it in almost a queue, and then you can walk away. And when that time that you set it to download comes along, it will select all the footage that you've requested to be downloaded and just trickle download that throughout the time period. So when you get back into the office at 9 a.m, you've got all your footage there to review. So that might be, I want you to download all the bookmarks from camera Y, but from camera X, I want you to download from between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. because we've had a request for footage from that time. And it just gives you that ability to do that, not have to be present, and it can also be done in a time that's more convenient when the camera's not in use, when you need it in high resolution and you don't want the downloading to affect your bandwidth.
Great stuff. And thanks for that on the downloader. And the new local user interface, Dan?
Yeah, so the new local user interface is very similar to the old local user interface, but the difference being is, of course, now we've moved away from Windows operating system and we've moved into Linux. So obviously we needed to design a new local user interface. It has a lot of features that the old one had that were well liked and used, and obviously we've got rid of the things that we've have feedback from customers that weren't used or weren't needed, and then we've added extra ones that customers did need and did want. So better joystick integration, for example. And the local user interface, for those that don't know, is in some situations we'll use the old movie of surveillance in a van. If you're in that van and you have the Vemotion unit inside, you don't want to have to send your stream off to somewhere and then view it in a viewer online when you're right next to the box. So it's a case of, if you have a monitor plugged into the HDMI out of our unit, you can have the local user interface on the unit and you can see the images that are coming back, but you can see them in the source quality. So you can see your camera in full HD without having to use any bandwidth or anything like that. You can also manipulate recordings and rewind live, pause live, zoom in, and all those things without it affecting what somebody's viewing remotely on their viewer or their phone.
Thanks for that, Dan, and thank you for enjoying the excitement. This is our product overview. what we're going to do now is going to let Dan do a quick one of our demos, just some of the basics on the viewer, what we can do, and we'll have a look really also at our bandwidth, kind of a refresher. Some of you won't have seen it, some of it's a refresher of what we can do as far as the way we actually manipulate bandwidth to make the most of the best picture, the best possible bandwidth. A few minutes with Dan, and then come back. Don't go anywhere, because after that it's the Q&A.
And now I'm going to show you the Vemotion viewer in all its glory. So as you can see, we've logged in as usual, and we've selected one of our online encoders, which is highlighted in green. And you can see that lower down we have the offline ones also. So first of all, if we hover over the image, we'll get this gray bar at the top. We're going to pin this, and this shows us our live kilobits per second and also the currently selected stream. If we right click on the image, we can select one of our pre-selected profiles, which we can change on the fly at any time. So we can go down really low, or we can go really high, and at the click of a button, that's done. So we'll stay around here. At the moment, as we can see, we've got our pan, tilt, and zoom, which can be done by clicking the screen. The closer we click to the center, the slower it moves, the further, the quicker. Something to note. And then obviously with the scroll wheel, we can zoom. If you don't want to use your mouse for that, we can select down here, and on the left hand side we have the old school controls. One of the new features that we have with our new pole cam and the Linux going forward is if we have a second encoder on the device, we can select a same camera again, but what we can do is if we digitally zoom on this second one, we can select an area of interest, which can come in handy when we are trying to keep an eye on an area of interest while maintaining an overview of the general area of which the camera can do. So what we can then do with the second encoder is we can turn on digital zoom, and we can zoom in on an area of interest that we want to focus on while still maintaining an overview of the general area. Now this can be useful for many of customers with regards to fly tipping or antisocial behavior, or if they just want a better look of a certain area, maybe a number plate or a vehicle, to see if there's something going on untoward that shouldn't be. And this doesn't affect the second view, so we can still see what's going on. And if we turn that off, we can then put that image back to normal without any issue. With regards to playback as well, what we can now do is we've now got the ability to rewind and pause live. So if we rewind, we can see that car come back, and then we can pause. And then what we can do with that pause is we can then digitally zoom and get a better image of that vehicle and potentially get the number plate. So we can do all that, and then once we've got what we need, we can go back to resuming live without any issue whatsoever. And that doesn't affect our recordings, which we can still get as usual without any issue. We then also have focused on live events. So we've got events now, whether it be events for motion detection, for alarming of sensors, tamper sensors, anything that the camera can send via an on-off alert, we can now feed through our viewer and we can have in here. So for instance, we can select recordings and we can go to play, and we can see that that is now a recording of the past, and we can see the car that was there before. We can also then pause that, and we can digitally zoom in again. We can get information that we want from the vehicle or anything else. What we can also do is we can also bookmark these events manually. We can put in a bookmark if there's something of interest happened, and we can download the last minute or the last 3 minutes, and we can bookmark it, or we can download and bookmark it. Okay, and then lastly, we do now have, as you can see, if we go into the settings, we do have a dark theme. So if this is going in a control room or something like that, where they don't want a bright blaring screen in the face, they can turn that into dark mode, and it'll give you this nice dark edge rather than the bright white. As you can see here, I have set up a mosaic. So using the viewer, you can select lots of different grid sizes. So here we've gone with a 4x4, and as you can see, we can see 4 different cameras on this. And obviously if we select the image, we can still PTZ all the cameras that have the ability to PTZ without any issue. We can individually control the stream quality of each of these images as independent. So we can have them on any selection we want. And we can also see
the high resolution versus the lower resolutions there. What we can also do is on the individual streams themselves with the Linux software is we can create quads or 9 views in the actual image itself. So you will lose the functionality of PTZ, however, you can see more images in one stream itself, and we can put that up to a 9 view also. And we can have those down to also a picture in picture, which what that will do is if we change that to dev 1, is we can see that in a picture in picture, we maintain the previous image in the top left-hand corner, but we now have a large view that we can PTZ. So in one image, so if we change this to just a one grid, we can see that we've got the picture in picture of the previous camera. We can see what's going on in that one, while we can still maintain PTZ and control of this one, which is a handy little feature, which means that the customer doesn't always have to have a second encoder on the same unit. They can have just one encoder and have this neat little picture in picture and be able to see what's going on in their other camera while still maintaining control of this camera. Lastly, we need to talk about the bandwidth and the abilities of the Vemotion software itself. So as we know, the networks that these cameras are running on are not always exceptionally good. 4G is not always fantastic, and neither is 5G. So in those times when things are fantastic, we can have an image like this where we can go up to, on this camera, 1080p. We can take in 2K and 4K cameras. That's not an issue for us in our Linux operation anymore. And we can see we've got a lovely image, but that is using a lot of bandwidth for it. 2.5 megasecond, okay, and the network might not always be able to handle that. So obviously the Vemotion software will step down automatically, but you might want to do that yourself anyway, just to save data costs. So these are pre-configured. However, you can have any of these you like. You can set up your own. That's not an issue. So we can go down to 600 kilobits a second here, which we can see that after a second, the image stabilizes as it's not sending the data that's not changing. So we're using a lot less, and that'll keep reducing over time. But we can go down as low as 1 frame at 20 kilobits a second. Now it's quite a blocky image, but if you're having issues with your network, you can see that that is perfectly an image that can be used to sense if there's motion, if there's something going on, if there's something happening in that scene. You're going to be able to know what that is, and you're using 20 kilobits a second, which is absolutely nothing on your network. So which also means that we go so low as to, so you don't get a black image, you still maintain a picture no matter what the quality of your network, as long as there is still at least 20 kilobits. And that about sums it up, and over to Nick.
Okay, Dan. Right, so we have got some questions, which is good news.
Always good.
It is always good. Otherwise, the Q&A session is rather dull. First question is: can we record on the server end as well as locally?
Yes, we can. So the way we do this is that we are now constantly streaming to the streaming server. So you do have to be aware that your data usage is going to increase, and we record at whatever quality is being streaming. So as per the demo, we can change the streaming quality on the fly. So if you have it set, for example, to HD, 25 frames, say 1200 kilobits per second, that's what we're going to record at. So that's the quality you're going to record. And also you need to bear in mind that that is also going to take up storage on that server. And it's not smart. It's more of a fail-safe. So if anything happens to the remote end where you've got the quality source footage that you can have with your events on, cataloging, all that, this is more of a, if you think it's a file dump, and it just gives you that backup, but it means that you do have that in case anything happens.
Okay, that's good to know. Second question, I'm sure I get the impression this has got an edge to it. If I buy extra encoders, because obviously the system, each unit comes with an encoder, and then you can have extra into there, extra software encoders. Can they be moved between units?
Yes, is the short answer. But obviously, to go into a little bit more detail, is we license everything via the streaming server. So when you buy a new piece of hardware for us, we obviously issue you with a new license, which has an extra encoder on it. If you buy a unit and buy 2 extra encoders on it, you've now got 3 added to your server. However, if you decide you want to take one of those and have 2 on one encoder and now 2 on this, you can do that. It basically is a pool of encoders which you can use up to the maximum that your license has available.
Good stuff. And finally, just come in. All right. Is there an upper limit of the number of encoders I can have on a streaming server?
Yes and no.
So the software itself has no physical limit. So you could have potentially 1,000 encoders on a streaming server, 2,000, and have no issue. Where you're going to come across an issue is with your available bandwidth to that streaming server. So if you have a 200 meg connection, upload and say download, so you've got a fixed lease line, then that is your limit. If you're viewing 200 cameras that are each using a meg, then you need a 200 meg connection. If you've got 300 cameras all, then you're going to run into a bandwidth issue and you're going to have to drop those down to be able to view. So the actual software itself doesn't have a limit. It will fall down to what your network can support.
Okay, it's a practical limit. Okay. And that appears to be it for questions. So it just gives me a chance to say thank you all for joining us for our first technical webinar, how to maximize your wireless opportunity with Vemotion. Obviously we are always available on the phone, we're always available on the email, and if you want to come and see us in person, we will be at the Farnborough show in the 3rd week of March, the policing and security show, which is we may even have some sweets on the stand to give you as well. Third week. It is the third week.
From the 14th, yeah.
Yeah.
It goes on the 14th.
Just about memorised that. Dan, thank you very much, and thank you all for watching, and we'll see you very soon in the Vemotion webinar series.